What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is episode number 2 of the Guns College Football Preview Show. Yes, I am him. I am Gunzpicks, the self-proclaimed college football GOAT. And man, am I excited for this season. We did episode 1 yesterday, and I felt like it was absolutely immaculate. With or without the technical difficulties that we had on this one, we got them fixed for this show. Lessons learned, and we're moving across the board. If you caught yesterday's show, we went over the SEC West. If you haven't seen it yet, you can just go to the Sports Wagering Network YouTube channel and click the live tab, and you can go check out episode 1 on my takes on the SEC West. But we're talking SEC East strictly on this show here, and then we're going to go transition to another conference next week. But this is going to be the last show of this week, and then we'll hit you back. Make sure you check us out every Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. I will be bringing more content through all of college football, baby. So let's get this show on the road. Let's start with the first team to analyze in the SEC East, and we're going to go with the Vanderbilt Commodores on this one. 5-7 last season, 2-6 in the conference. 15 returning starters, 7 on offense, 8 on the defensive side. Strength of schedule for them is 29th in the country. Let's look at the quarterback situation for the Vanderbilt Commodores. AJ Swan is back under center. He was switching roles, starting roles last season with Wright. Wright is transferred out, so AJ Swan is the guy. 6 starts last season, 58% completion rate, 10 touchdowns, 2 INTs for him last season. So he does have some experience, but time will tell if that will transition into a productive quarterback. The running back situation is a little bit light on the Vandy side. Ray Davis transfers out. He had over 1,000 yards rushing for the Commodores last season. So really, this position is going to be left to the freshman recruits that they've brought in. This is a tough spot, I think, lacking experience. So time will tell if we're going to get any sort of production. Big shoes to fill with Ray Davis gone for the Commodores. I believe he went over to Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. Wide receiver core pretty much intact. Top 3 receivers back, including Will Shepard, who had 9 receiving touchdowns last season for the Commodores. The tight ends are going to have to be fully replaced. Both starting tight ends from last season are gone. And, with that said, that's going to be a tough position for them to fill. Offensive line, probably one of their strong points in the offense here. 4 starters back. This is a line that gave their running backs 4.3 yards per carry last season and only allowed 15 sacks all season long. So this is going to be a promising thing for AJ Swan to get some time in the pocket to make the crisp passes to some seasoned vets for the wide receivers. Defensively, this has kind of always been a trick of the trade here for Vanderbilt. Not really a good defense overall. They've improved year to year, though. I would give them that, but they still give up over 5 yards per carry to running backs. 3 starters back on the defensive line. They did add a transfer from Stanford, so there is some starting experience there. So I see this unit improving. Linebacker core, they do lose their top tackler. Excuse me. But they return 3 starters, and they do add some depth in there by getting a transfer from Notre Dame. This is a unit, by the way, from a defensive perspective that gave up 36 points per game last season, 461 yards total to their opponents. So there's only one way to go, is up on this one. And for them, they're going to have to improve their secondary. Their secondary has just been absolutely abysmal year to year, and they're not great this year. This is a group that gave up 64% pass completion rate to their opponents, 125th in the country. They do lose 2 starters in the secondary, but for me, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Only one way to go is up for the improvement perspective. But I think this is going to be more key to the point that they're going to have to figure out how to get a pass rush together to put some pressure on their opponent quarterbacks so they don't have so much time with the secondary being as weak as they are. Defensively, I'm not impressed with Vandy this season. So looking at this from an overall perspective of the Vanderbilt Commodores, we got to look at the offense. They're going to be struggling early on trying to find a run game, but lucky for them, they have a good offensive line to kind of give them the protection. Maybe they get a little bit more pass happy in the offense with Clark Lee. Defense is just plain awful. There's no way to go but up. They're going to have to find a pass rush somehow and start and keep improving, stopping the run. Maybe even lower their yards per carry to under 5 yards per carry to their opponents. This is a team that was 5-7 last season, and this season they have the 29th toughest schedule. But you look at some of the games they have on the just non-conference. They get to play Hawaii again, play them last year, Alabama A&M and UNLV. Those are 3 wins, in my opinion, that Vandy should be able to get. Now you got to find that extra win. The total over and under for wins for Vandy is 3.5, and I think that's a little bit low on that one. I'm susceptible to taking the over in this one. Thinking, all they have to do, they get those 3 non-conference wins that they should get. All they have to do is maybe find a way to beat Wake Forest or just another team in their conference. I think they can sneak out 1 win. This is more than 4-win team, I think, coming off of a 5-win season. I can see them being right on the same level as they were last year. A couple things to know about Vandy, though. They've lost 12 straight SEC road openers. They're 4-8 against the spread in that regard. And also Clark Lee against ranked opponents. He has not done well for Vandy. 0-8 straight up and 1-7 against the spread. Losing games on an average of 40.6 points per game. They're going to have to improve there, too. I mean, Vandy's just plain awful. And if not the worst team in the SEC, they're definitely the worst team in the SEC East. So not looking for any promises. Maybe there's a couple of spots we can kind of sneak in and take them as a dog. But this is just a team that I don't see big things from them. But I do like the over 3.5 of the total wins. All right, moving along the board, moving along in the SEC East, we're going to go into Mizzou, the Missouri Tigers. These last year 6-7 overall, 3-5 in the conference. 15 returning starters for them, 7 on the offensive side, 8 on the defense. And they have one of the toughest schedules in the country this season, number 6 ranked toughest. Let's look at the offense here for the Missouri Tigers. Brady Cook comes back this season. Was their quarterback last year. Did earn the job, even though they have 2 quarterbacks that could probably take the position as well, and Jake Garcia. And they also have freshman Sam Horn in the waiting. So from a quarterback depth standpoint, they at least have that. Cook is a great dual threat quarterback last season. So I see them kind of doing that same type of mentality offense this year. The running game for Missouri should be good this season. They do return their top 2 running backs in Nathaniel Pete and Cody Schrader, who actually were very productive for the team last season. 4.4 yards per carry for Schrader, 768 yards on the ground, and 9 TDs. He was the leader for sure. Between Schrader, Pete, and the QB Cook, if you know how many rushing yards Cook did last year, he had over 700 himself in that dual threat role. So I see the running game probably going to be either improved or on the same level it was last season with all the main runners back. Now, when we look at the wide receiver core, this is a group that I think we're going to need some help here from Missouri. Top 2 wide receivers from last year went to the transfer portal, left the program. Top recruit from 2021, who had a really good first season with the production, but he wasn't the main target. He's going to have to get himself focused because I think he's going to be the top target for Missouri this season. And they add 2 new wide receivers from the transfer portal as well. So this is a question mark situation here for Missouri. While they should have a great run offense, I don't know if the wide receiver core is going to be up to snuff as they were last season. If you look at the offensive line, a lot of experience coming back, 4 starters coming back for Missouri. but they gave up 27 sacks last season. That is not great. And the running game only averaged 4.1 yards per carry. So hopefully a year older, a year wiser, much stronger unit together. Hopefully that number does improve this season. Defensively, we got to look at the defensive line. Big strength for Missouri last season, holding their opponents to 3.7 yards per carry and 35 sacks. That's a big improvement if you know about Missouri defenses. They were not very good against the run in 2021. 2022 was a much improved situation, now giving up 3.7 yards per carry. But with the caveat here, they do lose their top two defensive ends, which was the main source of success in the pass rush with Jeff Coat and McGuire. They are gone. And also they lose another depth guy who's really good at rushing the quarterback as well, in Coleman. So those guys are gone. They did go to the transfer portal to kind of rebuild their edge rushers, but no one I saw that was going to be able to fill the shoes that Jeff Coat McGuire brought to the table last season. So that is a question mark situation for the D line. Linebackers, they do bring back two key starters, and they had a transfer from Florida. Hopper and Bailey were number 2, number 3 tacklers last season for the Tigers. So I think this group is going to be well intact, and then they add a little bit of depth in there as well for Florida. So I see this unit improving. Secondary, they bring back all 4 starters, and they have probably arguably the best dual coverage guys in the country when Rakeshaw and Abrams Drain are back. So I see this unit from a coverage standpoint going to be looking really good on the pass defense. So this is a group that last year allowed 215 yards per game passing. So I think this is going to get under, hopefully, the low 200s and under for the passing unit here. But the one thing they're going to have to figure out first is that defensive front and figuring out how to get to the quarterback like they were getting last year with Jeff Coat and McGuire. So we'll see how the defense works there, but with at least from the secondary standpoint and the linebackers looking pretty tough for Missouri. Now we got to look at the overall package. So veteran group on the offensive side with the QB, O-line, and running backs. We're going to have to see how the passing game works with the kind of a depleted unit on the wide receiver side. But they also have a real tough schedule. Like I said, number 6 in the country. They're going to go face Kansas State once again at home. They're going to place LSU at home. They got at Kentucky, at Georgia, and Tennessee at home. Those are their toughest games on the schedule. Kansas State, of course, embarrassed Missouri last season, so that's a game to watch for me. They lost 40-12 in Manhattan, but Missouri has won 13 straight non-conference home games, so that's something to watch. They're also 9-4 against the spread in those sample size. Also, you got to look at Florida. Lost them 24-17. That'll be a big game for them in Gainesville. Now they get them back in Missouri. They've covered 7 out of the last 11 meetings versus Florida too, so that's something to watch. Also, it's senior day for them in that game. So the last 2 senior games, Missouri won outright, including beating Florida in 2021. Could have a repeat there. We'll see how that goes. But the overall perspective of Missouri, a lot of promise in there in a couple of spots. I do worry about their pass rush. I hope they don't revert back to what they were in 2021, which is a team that could not stop the run and get to the quarterback. But time will tell on that one. I do like what the offense is doing there. I think they're going to be very run heavy. And of course, I think their coverage unit is absolutely stellar on the defensive side. So probably around the same. I think I see this team probably in the same boat that they were last year. Right around bowl eligibility. Maybe get 7 wins out of there would be the goal for the improvement. But time will tell on this one. Very tough schedule for them this year. So nothing I would play from a win totals perspective. But this will be a team to watch and maybe even gamble on during the season in particular spots. All right, moving on down the board. Let's go to Gainesville, Florida. Let's go to the Swamp, where visors used to reign supreme. But this is a different Florida team now. This is a weaker Florida team. it's a Florida team that really we haven't seen them up to snuff, up to level in quite some time, it feels. Um, but this is the Florida Gators here. They were 6-7 last year, 3-5 in the conference, 15 returning starters, 10 on the offensive side, and 5 on the defense. We have to see if the new coaching regime will come to fruition. This is year 2 for them. Now you have the offensive situation. You lose Anthony Richardson. He goes into the draft, and I feel that we really didn't get what we were supposed to get out of him as a star. And we'll see what happens when Florida adds in their transfer, who's a former starter from Wisconsin, Graham Mertz. He'll be taking over the offense. He had his struggles, highly touted recruit for Wisconsin. Didn't really pan out to be what he was supposed to be. But we'll see with the different coaching change, the different team, if that kind of transitions him to what people projected him to be when he was a recruit. So from the offensive scheme side, I don't know if Graham Mertz is the fit. I guess time will tell with that. If you look at the running back situation, should be strong, and that's what you want here with the offensive schemes that Florida brings. Trevor Etienne, which is Travis Etienne's brother, should be the guy to take most of the snaps this year or take most of the reps. 6.1 yards per carry, just under 800 yards on the ground in his freshman season last year. So he's looking like he's going to be a star for the Florida Gators, but this will be the year to tell it. So they did get some talent for depth in the transfer portal as well. So this is going to be a strong unit, in my opinion. Wide receiver quorum is young and inexperienced group. Their top wide receiver is coming back in Pearsall, but they lose their other top 3 wide receivers. So this is going to be a unit that's going to be brand spanking new. But everything seems to be spanking new with this offense, especially at the quarterback. And looks like the running back transition will be with ATN. Offensive line is basically built solely on transfers this season. Only one starter is coming back from the offensive line, so that's going to be a tough. That's going to be a tough transition for Florida, especially with a pro style quarterback. This could be this could be tragic here for Florida. But let's see if the unit can find a way to gel sometime this season. Defensive line is going to be a full rebuild as well. All 4 starters from last year are gone. They did get some transfers from Louisville and Memphis, but this is going to be a questionable unit altogether. Are they going to be able to get the quarterback? Are they going to be run stoppers up front? I don't know that for sure. All 4 guys not working together for a long, extended period of time through training camp or what have you. I don't know if this unit's going to be able to gel in time here. Let's look at the linebackers on this one. They're in the same position as the defensive line, just losing everybody. So this is another group that's going to dip into the transfer portal to build their depth. And it's just kind of a ragtag of misfit toys, it seems like, for this Florida defense going to the transfer portal to kind of fill in the voids. D-backs lose their 2 safeties, cornerback depth, and a little bit of their cornerback depth on this one, but the core should be fine altogether with returning starters and transfers to fill in the roles. Veteran group altogether with the inclusion of the transfers, but they do lose both of their safeties. So we'll see if that's going to hurt them or help them on the road through the season. Overall, we look at this Florida team. It's a full changeover here. It seems like they just basically hit the reset button and brought in some transfers to kind of fill in the voids. Graham Mertz is going to be taking over. We'll see if he can actually transition into the Florida offense overnight, basically. And the defense is in a full rebuild as well. And they have the toughest schedule on the planet this year. Tough games. They have to go at Utah, and this is a revenge game for Utah, and Utah does not lose at home. And then they got Tennessee at home, Georgia, neutral site at the biggest cocktail party, at LSU, and then they get Florida State at home to finish the year. Very, very, very tough schedule, and you can see why it's ranked number 1 and toughest in the country. But when you look at these, they also have to deal with LSU on the road, Georgia neutral. I mean, this is going to be a tough one for Florida overall to get back to where they were. I'm also going to look at Florida had lost 6 out of the last 7 SEC road games in the last 2 seasons. So if they get a lot of road games, it's not going to bode well here for Florida. Yeah, I'd have to look at the win total on this one. I didn't post this in what will be the final picks on this one, but I would lean on the under on this one if it's anywhere from 7 and up. I don't know if I'll necessarily take them at 6.5. I think they can find those wins, but anything over 7, I might be leaning towards the under for Florida. Doesn't look good overall from Gator Nation. Next team we're going to be going over here is we're going to Kentucky, and we're going to be talking about the Wildcats, and we're not talking about the basketball team here. We're talking about the football team. So it'll be the era without Will Levis. 7-6 last season, 3-5 in the conference, 15 returning starters, 10 on the offensive side, 5 on the defense. Their schedule is the 19th toughest in the country. Change over here at quarterback, but I think it's for the better. Will Levis is gone, but they get a great transfer quarterback in the transfer portal in Devin Leary. So solid passer, a great player for NC State, but had to deal with a lot of injury issues along the way. But when he was healthy, the dude was a star. So I think with his mobility and his ability to kind of run the offense, this is a good thing for Kentucky. Running back position, of course, there's going to be a changeover in this as well. Chris Rodriguez and Kavate Smoke are gone. So they had to dip into the transfer portal. And who do they get? I just talked about him when I talked about my Vandy analysis. They get Ray Davis to take over, 1,000-yard rusher. Should be in good hands there. A very electric athlete that can handle the workload it takes to be a solid running back in college. They also get some help from NC State for added depth at the running back position as well. But tough shoes to fill with Chris Rodriguez gone. But I think they're in good hands with Ray Davis. Looking at the wide receivers, they do return their top 5 wide receivers from last season. The ball was pretty much spread evenly with a lot of these wide receivers with Will Levis. So it'll be interesting to see what the dynamic will be with Devin Leary under center, but at least he has veterans to throw to. Offensive line is going to be used to be a huge liability for them last season, but they only rushed for 3.3 yards per carry, and they gave up 47 sacks with a 13.5% sack rate. So that is a circle need to improve here. On the bright side, they do have 4 starters returning for them, and they added some depth at left tackle, grabbing the starter for Northern Illinois to come help them out. So he has a lot of experience, not playing for in the MAC. They also added some depth by getting a couple of linemen out of Alabama and USC. So there is a good core with depth. So I could see this unit improving. There's no way to go but up with, especially when you're only allowing 3.3 yards per carry to your own running backs, and 47 sacks is definitely unacceptable as well. Defensive side, D-line brings back 2 starters. Deion Walker is back for them, who is really impressive as a freshman. So high promises, high hopes for him to be a star for them. And they also get some transfer help from UNC. This is a group that's promising, needs to improve on stopping the run and getting to the quarterback. They only had 20 sacks last season, so hopefully they can get a pass rush together for this group here. Now, the linebacker core does lack depth, but they do have their top tackler in Jackson back, and they added another transfer from NIU in Rayner, who was absolutely solid for them at the linebacker position in the MAC. So they got a couple of good athletic linebackers to help that core out. So they're very talented here. But if injuries do happen, I think they will lack some depth overall. So while they do have good players, the depth is a concern. Secondary is virtually brand new for them, with the exception of the front, the safety position and number two tackler Jordan Love. Jordan Love is an absolute star for them. They do add a transfer in JQ Hardaway, and this unit will have some size. I mean, when you actually look at this unit for Kentucky, it's rare that you get all your corners and safeties over 6 foot, and this is the unit that is very tall, very lanky. This is a unit that held their opponents to 59% pass completion rate, 171 yards passing last year. So I see this group doing what they do best and stopping the pass. We'll see if the defensive line can actually get some pressure. That is a concern for me for the defense. Overall, when you look at this squad from an offensive and defensive perspective, um, they do get their OC back this season. From a brief stint in the NFL, or at least it's their former OC, so that may spark the offense that was missing last season. Leary's a proven starter. He has an experienced wide receiver corps. So this offense is going to be probably a lot better with Leary, as long as he can stay healthy, than they were with Levis, in my opinion. I thought Levis really dropped off at the end of the year, and I don't see Leary as a competitor. She should be in a better position. Also, the defense has questions all the way across the board. Only 5 defensive starters back here. This is a group that only allowed 19.2 points per game last season, so hopefully they can repeat that. That's going to be a tough spot from what they did last year on the defensive side. Games to watch for them. They got to go at Vandy. Kentucky lost to Vandy at home last season, 21-17 to 17-point fave. So they're going to want to bite into the Vanderbilt Commodores, and of course, the running back Ray Davis returning to his alma mater would be an interesting game as well. Also got to look at Kentucky 0-15 straight up versus SEC West teams on the road. That's something to look at. 0-11 under Mark Stoops. 5-1 straight up and 4-2 against the spread versus SEC West teams at home, though. So home games, Kentucky plays its best ball. When you get them on the road, very suspect overall. So if they're playing anyone on the other side of the conference on the road, make sure you fade them, is what that stat is telling you. All right, moving on to the next team on here. We're going into South Carolina, where the Gamecocks play. This is an interesting group here. Interesting dynamic with a very tough schedule. They have the number 2 toughest schedule in the country. They got 10 returning starters, 6 on the offensive side, 4 on the defense. And they were 8-5 last year, losing their bowl game to my guys at Notre Dame. So the quarterback position is pretty much locked up for them. Spencer Rattler is back. He's always been a coin flip overall, should have been an absolute star. And he showed signs of it at the end of the year. Finished with two great performances against Tennessee and Clemson, getting wins for them in those 2 games. We'll need to improve on his INTs and take care of the football in year 2 of the Beamer offense. That'll be a concern for them looking into the season. Their RBs, the running backs lack depth, losing 3 out of their 4 top running backs from last season. They have McDowell back, but he's not very big. He's not a big every down back guy. So they actually went to the portal and they're bringing in a D2 transfer that averaged 7.4 yards per carry in Division II football. And then they just moved Joyner, who was a wide receiver, into the running back position. So what these moves kind of feel like you're duct taping a hole in a water tank. It's not great depth on this one. I'm a little bit concerned about the run game altogether. They could be a little bit more pass heavy than normal. But when you look at the wide receiver corps, they have similar issues here, losing 4 out of their 5 top wide receivers last season. They do get back their top receiver, though, in Antoine Wells. But with South Carolina, what did they do? And what good teams should do is they dipped into the transfer portal. and got some recruits to fill in the void. They go to Arkansas. They get Trey Knox, a great tight end for Arkansas. They do get Josh Simon from Western Kentucky, who was all Conference USA when he was there. So they got some guys that can help out here. They also get Eddie Simon from Memphis too. So a lot of depth there, and also consider their recruiting class as well. They do have one of the top wide receivers touted last year in 2021, Nicholas Harbor. So he should start here as a true freshman. Good recruit for them that they picked up this season. I'm sorry, I meant 2022. So we'll see if that guy can actually live up to his potential that they ranked him as. So we'll see if this passing unit should improve. But on paper, with the transfers that they've made, getting their top receiver back, and also adding in a great freshman, this should be a very solid unit altogether. The offensive line has been terrible for South Carolina over the years. They've only allowed 3.8 yards per carry to their running backs, 31 sacks they gave up last season. So this is not a great group. They have to improve. 2 starters back for them this season, but will likely lose one for a period of time due to injury that he did in the spring. So they have a lot of fill-in roles here from FCS, uh, former FCS athletes. So I'm not sure if they're going to be really living up to the potential of playing SEC football against, the athletes that the SEC brings from the defensive perspective. So this line, offensive line, very much a concern here for South Carolina. Protecting Spencer Rattler is going to be tried and true here. I'm not excited about this offensive line. They may regress from a group that's already on the massive decline. So the defensive line on this one, though, looking at the defensive perspective, last year they allowed 4.9 yards per carry rushing and only 20 sacks. This is a group that needs to improve. Only one starter back from last season's unit, but they got a solid transfer from Syracuse to help out. Replacements, mostly juniors and seniors that were just kind of dug deep into the depth chart here. So I don't really know if this unit's going to improve or not. Only one way to go but up with almost giving up 5 yards per carry on the ground. That's unacceptable. We'll see if that group improves. Linebackers, pretty thin on the linebacker side for South Carolina. I got to be honest here. Their top middle linebacker, Kaba, is back from injury, so getting him back is going to help. But this is a young and inexperienced squad altogether. It's going to be a challenge for them all season long to jive and mold and try to get to a position where they can um, be a good defense or at least make stops. Defensive backs will be the strength of this team altogether. Seems like that's been the MO for a lot of these teams that I'm analyzing. The fronts are a little bit weak, going through a transition, but it seems like the secondary's always been pretty solid for them. They're getting back top tackler and Nick Amanawari. I might be saying the name wrong there. Plus, they get 3 starters back, so they should be fine. This is a group that held opponents to 207 yards per game passing last season with a 53.7% completion rate. So the coverage, obviously, solid as hell. I'm not concerned with them on that front. But if they're not going to be able to put pressure on the quarterback, this is going to make these D-backs have to work extremely hard to make stops and protect against the pass. Overall, this team on paper appears to be almost in a similar position that they were last season. Their backfield is lacking weapons, of course. That is a concern. And then, of course, the offensive line is concerned if they can actually protect Spencer Rattler. But the one thing I'm not concerned with, obviously, is what they've done in the wide receiver form. They're going to really have to step it up and help this offense out due to the lack of every other type of weapon that's on that team. They have the like I said, the toughest schedule, second toughest schedule in the country. They have to go start the season. They got to play UNC, then they got to go at Georgia, at Tennessee, at Texas A&M, and then they play Clemson. Which would be in a revenge spot for Clemson at the end of the season. So when you actually look at their schedule, I'm not really high on South Carolina being a big time contender. I think they're going to get less wins than they got last season. I think the total for them is 6.5 right now. It's hard for me to find 7 wins for them on the board. I can see them winning 6 and getting eligible, but for regular season purposes, not going to be a team I would back on the over. So I'm looking at the under on total wins here for South Carolina. All right, moving across the board, we have 2 teams left. And before we get to that, I just want to make sure if you're watching this now, you're watching this later, please like and subscribe to the Sports Wagering Network YouTube channel. Support us. All the live content that's going to be coming out here all football season long is going to be absolutely sharp, absolutely immaculate. If you weren't following along last season or what I did, just want to put that record up there. I was 169, 136, and 6 plus 45 units if you tailed all my plays. And plus, we had an amazing uh, bowl season to get. Plus, we were over 20 units in bowl season alone. So make sure you follow along on this channel. It's going to be absolutely electric with the content that we're going to be putting out here. All right. Now we're moving here to Rocky Top. Woo! Rocky Top, Tennessee. You've been so good to me. 11-2 last season, 6-2 in the conference. 12 returning starters. Lost a lot of beef on this one. 5 on the offensive side, 7 on the defensive side. 18th toughest schedule in the country this season. Now we know what's going on with them. Of course, they lost a lot of weapons on the offensive side. QB Corum, Hendon Hooker is gone. Gone to the NFL. But they got a good quarterback to step into the role in Joe Milton. He had solid numbers for Tennessee before losing his job to Hooker. Hooker was just a better passer, a little bit more accurate with his throws. And of course Milton did finish the season for Tennessee when Hooker went out with the ACL injury, and also got them a Orange Bowl win. So the quarterback position to me right now seems like it's in good hands. They also have a top recruit backing him up. So with depth, if something would happen to Milton, the quarterback position should be in good hands. But like what Hendon Hooker did last year was Heisman-esque. We'll see if Joe Milton can fill the shoes that were left from Hooker. Also, you got to look at the running back quorum here. Maybe overlooked, but I think this is a group that's going to go way under the radar here. 3 of their top rushers are back this year with Wright, Small, and Sampson. This is a squad that averaged 5 yards per carry last season, and with all 3 productive on the ground and a mobile quarterback, this should be a strong group altogether. So under the radar, no one's looking at this running back form. I think it's going to be very strong for them. Wide receivers, they get three out of their top 4 wide receivers back. Of course, they lose their main guy though, Jalen Hyatt, as he goes to the NFL. He was their top deep threat last season, and he had an amazing year overall. They did add some depth with some few transfers to kind of fill the void that was lost by Hyatt, but this is going to be a big hill to climb for this unit. We'll see how it transitions here under the very high pace, no huddle style of offense that Tennessee brings. Offensive line should be in good shape on this one. 3 returning starters for them, and they also add a couple transfers from Miami and Texas. This is a veteran group of juniors and seniors, so I don't see any downgrading of this unit at all. But let's go into the defense, see if we're going to see a strong unit here. Defensive line loses their top defensive lineman, and Omari Thomas. So they're going to have to fill in the losses with some depth that's on the bench. But luckily, these are guys that have been in the program for a while. Juniors and seniors are going to be filling in these starting roles. So will there be much of a drop off? Not that I'm seeing here. I think we got a good veteran group here. With the linebackers, they get back their top tackler, Aaron Beasley, and they get the number 4 tackler as well from the linebackers. They dip into the transfer portal to fill in some additional starter voids. So they go to BYU and get Keenan Pili. And he's a solid linebacker for BYU with a lot of starting experience. This is another group that has a lot of seniors and juniors as well. So I don't see much of a drop off in the linebacker core from last year. Uh, secondary, last season struggled immensely, but that was a lot of the fact that they lost a lot of their coverage guys due to injury. Um, they get back everybody except for Trevon Flowers, but they get some. They go to BYU yet again, get another solid transfer to fill in that void. Only one way to go, but up with this group. They gave up 290 yards passing per game last season. So this is a group that needs to find a way to improve. But luckily, this is a group that was there last year, so they should improve those numbers, hopefully. So overall, I got to see what this offense does with Joe Milton. I know he has the ability to play well. He did it over at Michigan. So him in the starting role, I don't see him losing it, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a short leash with him, knowing that they have a top recruit right behind him, salivating to get some playing time. But I don't see much of a drop off here, of course, with this offense. Are they going to be scoring like crazy, like Hendon Hooker and Hyatt was doing? Probably not. I think it's going to be a little bit more methodical, maybe a little bit drop off in the points per game, but still a solid unit overall. And of course, looking at the defense, they're going to have to figure out how to stop the pass. I know most of that was predicated on the fact that a lot of the guys got hurt and they had to fill in with a lot of deep down the bench. I don't think they're going to have to do that this year. But it's going to be something to watch. This is a group that gave up a ton on the passing game to their opponents last season. If you look at their schedule overall, they got some tough games. They got to go to Florida. They got to play A&M. They got to go at Bama. They got UGA on the board, and Bama for that matter. And also they have to go on the road to go play Kentucky. Always a tough place to play. So there's 5 games right there that could easily be losses. And knowing that the total for them is 9.5, I think this might be a little bit too high of a total here for the Vols, especially with the transition that they're going through with their offense. So this is also a revenge game. This is a game to watch here for for Bama. The Vols did beat Bama at home last second field goal, so that's going to be something that's going to be stuck in their mind. And now they have to go to Tuscaloosa to go repeat that. But when you look at Tennessee, every time they've gone to Alabama, they've lost 9 straight there by an average of 20 points per game. So keep that in mind when they have to go into Tuscaloosa. Also, the other game that's going to be tough for them is Florida. Vols haven't won in Florida in 9 straight trips. And then of course they beat Florida last season at home, 38-33. So that was a tough loss for the Gators. Gators seeking revenge on this one. I don't know if Tennessee's going to be able to sneak out of there with a W, but they have a very, very tough schedule altogether. They're in a couple of really sneaky spots where they could get backdoored or lose to an underdog, which is the reason why I don't like them to win more than 10 games this season. I think they're an 8 or 9 win team at best, and getting 9.5, taking the under on this one would be the play I would go with. All right, last and certainly not least, how could we not finish the SEC off without talking about Les Champions, back-to-back champions for that matter, the Georgia Bulldogs coming in here off of 15-0, 8-0 in the conference last season, returning 13 starters, 6 on the offensive side, 7 on the defensive side, and their strength of schedule, they have one of the weakest schedules this season, 56 in the country. So let's talk about the offense for UGA. Of course, Stetson Bennett gone. He was 35 years old and had to retire or something. I don't know. No, I think he's in the NFL right now, but seems like he's been there forever. So losing him is going to be a little bit of a setback. They do have Carson Beck to take over the role, but he has limited experience. They also have Brock Vandegrift, who was a 5-star recruit in 2021. Quarterback position, I don't see much of a drop off for them, to be honest with you. I think the talent's there. Granted, you want a competitor like Stetson Bennett, you may lose an edge there. But the way this offense is, from the offensive line, the wide receivers, and the running back, just a bevy of talent. They'll be fine overall offensively. looking at the running back core, virtually intact. They, with the exception of Kenny McIntosh, but they get Dejon Edwards, who had 5.5 yards per carry last season, and they have Kendall Milton, who had 7 yards per carry last season. So with that 1-2 punch there, they're going to be just fine in the running back core. And then when you look at the wide receivers, for that matter, they get back their top 2 wide receivers from last season. Of course, they get back Glad McConkey, who was absolutely electric for him in the for them in the championship game and the college football playoffs altogether. And of course, the #1 tight end in the country and Mackey Award winner in Brock Bowers, which I thought was going to the draft this year. I couldn't believe he was like only a year away from actually being eligible for that. But those 2 guys are going to be back in the offense, so wide receiver corps is going to be just fine. They also add 2 SEC transfers, and Dominic Lovett, who is the leading wide receiver for Missouri last season, and then they get Rara Thomas from old Mississippi State. So great weapons altogether. This is a loaded group with McConkey, and then you add Lovett to the mix with Brock Bowers. Absolutely electric for any quarterback. Can't ask for anything more from the Georgia Bulldogs. Offensive line also brings back 3 starters, um, having to replace their tackles. That went over to the draft. This is a group that ended up allowing their running backs to get 5.5 yards per carry, and they only allowed 9 sacks. They were obviously one of the top, if not the top, offensive line in the country. Even with the replacements, this is the top 5 caliber offensive line in the nation. This is not. This is a group that's going to do just fine for their new quarterback, whether it be Carson or Brock, to be taking over the roles and the snaps. Uh, Overall, just assessing this offense, one of the best in the country still, flat out for Georgia. Defensive line, looking at their situation, they do lose their top defensive lineman in Jalen Carter, but they get back Michael Williams, who led the team in sacks last season, and they get Zion Longe or Logue. Zion Loge. I don't know what the name is. I can't say all these guys' names. Um, so they get him back. Um, this is a group that was absolutely amazing, astounding. They only allowed 77 yards per game rushing to their opponents. They had 35 sacks last season. This group is going to be just fine, even though there's not really a dead set guy that is the star of that team. Losing Jalen Carter is going to be tough, but I trust what Kirby Smart's doing over there at Georgia. Linebackers are going to stay strong. They get 3 starters back, including their top 2 tacklers. Modon and Johnson are going to be back for them, as well as Javon Bullard. He's going to be back for them, who performed outstanding in that college football playoff run that they did. Absolutely amazing job. He's probably the defensive MVP in both of those games. No drop off, only getting better for this team. So the linebackers are going to be outstanding once again for the Georgia Bulldogs. The defensive back's going to be a little bit weaker. They do lose their top. Christopher Smith and Ringo are gone with the team. Their safety core should be intact. They get Lannister back and Bullard, who's a great pass rusher. Um, so but the corners are going to be a little bit of a question for them. I'm sure that Georgia's got another 5-star in the waiting, ready to take over the role there. But losing that much veteran stardom in the corners with Smith and Ringo, we'll see if that transition is going to be on level to what they've been the past 2 seasons, or if there's going to be a little bit of a drop off. But when you look at Georgia altogether, they're just going to be outstanding once again. They're going to be contending for another championship to make it a three-peat. This is the best team in the country on paper right now, and it shows with so many guys coming back with this team. Huge weapons for them, not only on the offensive side and the defensive side. And even though losing Stetson Bennett is a detriment to the team, they're just going to have another 5-star quarterback in the waiting. I see this team doing tremendous things this season, even with their schedule being as weak as it is. Missouri is going to be one game that you're going to have to look at. It seems like when they play Missouri, They do have a little bit of a struggle with them. It's almost like they overlook them, that they have another game down the road that they're looking at on this one. But uh, only beating them by 4 points last season. Georgia's won 9 straight, but Missouri has covered 3 out of the last 4 meetings. So that might be something that we have to look at, taking Missouri on the number. And they also got to play Ole Miss. There'll be senior day when they have to play Ole Miss, and they're 0-4 against the spread in that game. That's another game to look at, because I think Ole Miss is going to be very good, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And then they got to play Tennessee. Tennessee, this is the reason why this is an interesting game to me is Georgia historically kills Tennessee every single year, kills them. Last 3 visits, Georgia has won by 41, 29, and 24. Last loss there was in 2015. So they play better when they have to go play at Tennessee rather than playing at home against Tennessee. That's the interesting point of this one. When they go to Knoxville, they knock the stuffing out of Tennessee. Another reason why I like the under in that total. I don't think they're beating Georgia at all. But overall assessments of this team, like I said, this is championship caliber team yet again. The team to beat, probably arguably the favorite to win the national championship. I can't take that away from them. The stats show me this is a team to watch. I literally look at their schedule. I don't see them losing at all in the regular season. So we'll see what happens in the SEC championship. And of course, with college football, a lot of things can happen as well. You get caught sleeping on the wrong day. Next thing you know, you're looking at a loss. So we'll see what happens there with the Georgia Bulldogs. All right. That is all the teams in the SEC East. But now we got to talk about win totals here, baby. Let's get the music going. Get it going. Okay. Oh. Woo! There we go. Let's style into it. Win total picks on this one. I did describe some of them during the broadcast here. We're going to go Vandy over 3.5 wins. Tennessee under 9.5 wins. I think their schedule is just too tough this year. And, of course, they got Georgia and Bama on the board. There's no way I see this team winning 10 wins this season. And then, of course, we have South Carolina in a complete drop-off, toughest schedule in the country. And it shows here. Give me South Carolina under 6.5 wins there as well. So that's going to do it for the SEC portion of the college football playoff. I think next we're going to be breaking down the Big Ten next week, doing it in 2 parts, of course. And we will be deep diving into every single team in that conference as we get closer and closer and closer to the start of what will be an immaculate college football season. I'm looking forward to it. I'm pumped up. I hope you are too. Thanks for joining the show. I appreciate everybody that's been watching here. Keep watching for more sharp content on the Sports Wagering Network. Make sure you like and subscribe to not only this video, but also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you know when we always go live. So good luck with your plays today in baseball. Hopefully you tail some of these futures. Let's cash some tickets. Let's have ourselves a damn 2023 college football season. See you next time to break down the Big Ten. Good luck with your plays. And as always, let's keep dancing. Back.